Welcome to a space where creativity comes to life. On this channel, every video is crafted to tell a story, spark emotion, and inspire new perspectives. If you enjoy content with meaning and style, consider subscribing and becoming part of this creative journey.
She was still in our bed when I called her, and I knew it. I knew exactly where she was, who she was with, and what they were doing. I had known for 11 weeks. And when she picked up the phone and started telling me she needed to talk, that she had something important to say, that she hoped I'd understand, I leaned back in my chair, looked out at the Pacific, and let her talk. I didn't say much, just listened. My girlfriend Simone was asleep next to me, her hand resting on my arm, and I thought to myself, 32 years. 32 years of marriage, and this is how it ends. With me sitting in a hotel room 2 states away, pretending I don't know a thing. But let me start where it actually started. My name isn't important. What matters is that I spent most of my adult life building something. I own a mid-sized commercial landscaping company in Arizona. The kind of business that doesn't look glamorous but keeps 36 families employed and puts real money through its accounts. I started it at 26 with a used truck and a borrowed Aerotor. By the time I was 53, we had contracts with 3 hospital complexes, 2 university campuses, and a city parks maintenance deal that took 8 years to land. I am not a man who quits when things get hard. That's important to understand about me. My wife. I'll call her my wife because that's what she legally still was at the time. Let's say her name is Renata. No, wait. Her name was Loretta. That's what I'll call her here because she hated that name. Her aunt was named Loretta and they didn't get along. So Loretta. Loretta and I met in our early 20s at a 4th of July party. She was funny then. Sharp. She could make an entire room turn and look at her without raising her voice. She had this way of landing a punchline that felt like a gift, like she was giving you something. I fell for her fast, and I never really stopped falling, even when the falling started to hurt. We had 2 kids. Our daughter is 30 now and lives in Denver. Our son is 27 and works with me at the company. Neither of them knew what was happening when it started unraveling. I made sure of that. Loretta stopped working when our kids were small and never went back. That was her choice and I supported it. I made enough. For years, that arrangement worked the way arrangements work when both people are trying. Then something shifted. I couldn't tell you exactly when. Somewhere in our mid-40s, she started keeping score differently. My hours at work became evidence of neglect. My friendships became things she resented. My interest in the business, which had given us everything, the house, the cars, the vacations, the security, became something she treated like a personal insult. I tried to adapt. I cut back my hours one season. She said I was underfoot. I went back to full hours. She said I cared more about grass than I cared about her. I started suggesting counseling. She said we didn't need it. We just needed me to listen better. I tried to listen better. Apparently, I still wasn't listening correctly. Nothing I did landed right anymore. Every gesture I made was either too much or not enough. At some point, I stopped trying to argue back. Not because I agreed with her, but because I had learned that arguing accomplished nothing. When she would push for a fight, I'd give her a look she hated. Calm, slightly amused, and walk away. She absolutely despised that look. She once told me it made her feel like I thought she was being childish. I didn't say anything to that either, which made it worse. Looking back, I think that's when she started talking to him. His name, I eventually found out, was Darnell. He was 41, divorced, worked in pharmaceutical sales. They met at a charity auction for the children's hospital, an event I'd paid for us both to attend and then couldn't go to because a pipe burst at one of our job sites at 6 in the afternoon. She went alone. That was 3 years ago. I found out 11 weeks before the phone call in the hotel room, not because I was suspicious, because a woman named Simone told me. Simone had been dating Darnell for almost a year when she found the texts. She wasn't looking for them. His phone was on the counter. Her hand knocked it. It lit up. She saw Loretta's name. Then she saw enough. She did what I would have done. She sat with it for 2 weeks, said nothing, and then started looking more deliberately. When she had enough, she tracked down the company. Not hard. Loretta had apparently told Darnell whose wife she was, probably to brag about the lifestyle. Simone found the website. She called the main line on a Tuesday morning, asked for the owner, and my assistant put her through because Simone said it was about a service complaint. That's how she ended up sitting across from me in my office, telling me my wife had been sleeping with her boyfriend for nearly 2 years. I'm not going to tell you I was calm. I wasn't. I made it to the conversation, and then I put my head down on my desk, and I stayed that way for a while. Simone didn't leave. She sat there and let me have the moment, which I appreciated more than I could say at the time. When I lifted my head, she was still there, watching me with something in her expression that wasn't pity. It was more like recognition, like she understood precisely what I was feeling because she was a few weeks behind me and feeling it herself. We talked for 2 hours. She laid out everything her own investigation had turned up. The hotel receipts she'd photographed on his laptop, the calendar entries coded with initials, the weekends Darnell told her he was at a sales conference. She had also, quietly, hired someone, a retired investigator named Portman, who had 20 years of this kind of work and operated with total discretion. Portman had documentation, dates, locations, photographs, the kind of file that removes all doubt. I told her I needed time to think. She nodded. She gave me her number. She stood up, shook my hand like we'd just closed the deal, and walked out. I sat in that office for a long time after she left. What I felt wasn't what I expected. I had imagined, in the abstract way that you sometimes imagine bad scenarios, that if I ever found out something like this, I'd be destroyed by it, leveled. What I actually felt was a cold, clarifying anger that settled in slowly like weather, not the hot kind that makes you do stupid things. The other kind, the kind that has patience. I called my accountant the next morning, my attorney the morning after that. I spent the following 3 weeks in quiet consultation with both of them and with Portman, who I retained myself. I did not change my behavior at home. I did not start arguments. I did not look at Loretta differently. I got up every morning and went to work and came home and ate dinner and made conversation and went to bed. I was so ordinary it should have been a performance, but it wasn't. I had simply decided what I was going to do, and the decision gave me a kind of stillness. During that same period, I started spending more time with Simone. Not the way you might assume at first, it wasn't like that initially. We were two people who had both been blindsided and who kept finding reasons to talk it through. She had a dry sense of humor that surfaced in dark moments, which I recognized as a coping mechanism because I used the same one. She was a civil engineer, worked for the county, organized in a way I appreciated. She brought a legal pad to our second meeting and had written down questions. I almost laughed. Almost. The feelings crept up on me. I don't think either of us engineered it. By the time I realized I was looking forward to our calls the way I used to look forward to things a long time ago, the situation at home had already been decided. I wasn't leaving Loretta for someone else. I had already decided to leave Loretta. What Simone was something that happened on the other side of that decision. She told me she'd ended things with Darnell 3 weeks in. Said she hadn't even felt sad about it, just tired. I told her I understood that kind of tired. Now, here is where the practical part comes in, because I know that's what people want to understand. My attorney, whose name I'm not using because she asked me not to, sat me down early in the process and explained Arizona law with a kind of efficiency that makes you grateful you're paying someone well. Arizona is a community property state. Everything acquired during the marriage is split 50-50. On paper, that sounds catastrophic for someone who built a business from zero to significant over the course of a marriage. In practice, there are legal structures and moves that an intelligent person can make before any divorce action is filed. Moves that, once proceedings begin, are no longer available. I am an intelligent person. I had been the primary account holder on every financial instrument we had. The business accounts, the investment accounts, the property. This was not a trick I played on Loretta. It was simply how things had been set up when we were two people who trusted each other. I'd never tried to disadvantage her. That's just how our finances were organized. Over the 11 weeks between Simone's visit and the phone call from the hotel, I reorganized them. The house had been purchased with business revenue and was titled in the business name. A detail from a refinance years ago that Loretta had signed without reading, as she signed most financial documents. My attorney confirmed that this made it company property, not marital property. The business itself, I restructured, a move I had discussed with my accountant for legitimate tax reasons the prior year but had never executed. I executed it now. Our investment portfolio, which was held in accounts under my name with Loretta listed as beneficiary, was liquidated and moved to a separate structure under business accounts. All of it legal. All of it documented. All of it documented, all of it done before any divorce proceeding existed. When I left for the business trip, which was partly real, I did have 2 client meetings. I brought what I needed. Simone flew out and met me. The movers, whom I had retained 2 weeks prior, were scheduled to arrive at the house on the second morning I was away. That morning, Loretta called me. I was on the hotel balcony. Simone was inside getting coffee from the machine in the room. The sun was just coming up. I looked at Loretta's name on the screen for a moment before I answered. She opened with pleasantries, asked if the trip was going well. There was something artificial in her voice, the way there is when someone is working up to something. I let her work up to it. I made small talk. I told her the meetings were fine. I told her the weather was nice. I waited. Eventually, she said she needed to tell me something. She said she had been doing a lot of thinking. She said she hoped I'd be able to hear her out because she felt like we'd grown apart and she thought it would be better for both of us, she said, for both of us, if we separated. She had talked to a lawyer, she said. She thought we could make it simple and fair. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I said, "What does fair look like to you?" She had clearly rehearsed this part. She had a list. She wanted the house, primary claim on the investment accounts, a negotiated stake in the business, and support payments. She said it all in one breath, the way you say something you've memorized. I let her finish. Then I said, "I'm glad you called, because I have some things to tell you too." I told her the movers should be there by 9. I told her the house was company property and she could confirm that with any attorney she chose. I told her the accounts had been consolidated into the business structure some weeks prior. I told her my attorney would be sending over paperwork later in the day. There was a silence on the line that I have thought about since. Not a short silence. A long one. The kind that happens when a person is recalculating everything. She said, "What do you mean the movers are there?" I said, "They'll be there at 9. The crew is professional and they're taking the company-owned furniture. You're welcome to stay in the house through the end of the month. I've arranged that with my attorney, but the structure belongs to the business entity." She said my name. Just my name, once, the way you say it when you're trying to get someone to stop. I said, "I know about Darnell. I've known for a while. I'm not angry about it. I've had time to process it. I just want you to understand the situation clearly so you can make good decisions going forward." Another silence. She said, "Who told you?" I didn't answer that. She said, "This isn't legal." I said, "My attorney disagrees, and so does the county recorder's office, and so does the state statute. But you're welcome to get a second opinion, or a third." I could hear something changing in her voice, not grief exactly. More like the specific panic of someone who had planned very carefully for an outcome that is not materializing. She said, "I have a lawyer too." I said, "I hope they're a good one. I genuinely mean that. You'll need good representation." She started talking faster then, about the marriage, about everything she'd done, about how she had given up her career, about fairness and what 32 years meant. I listened. I had made a decision early in this process that I was not going to be cruel. I was not going to celebrate. I was not going to be the person who gloats. What I had done to protect what I built. I wasn't going to extract anything beyond that. When she wound down, I told her I was sorry things had ended this way. I told her I meant it. I did. Then I hung up. Simone came out onto the balcony with 2 cups of coffee and handed me one without asking how it went. She sat in the other chair and looked out at the water. After a minute, she said, "You okay?" I thought about it. I said, "I think so." "Yeah." She nodded. We drank our coffee. The months after were complicated in the way that months after big things always are. Loretta's attorney was competent and aggressive, and found several angles to challenge, some of which had merit and required real negotiation. I paid significant legal fees. So did she eventually for money she borrowed from her sister because she had no liquid assets of her own. The business restructuring held up. The property issue was more contested, and we ultimately settled on a cash payment to her rather than a prolonged fight that would have cost us both more than the settlement was worth. My attorney told me I came out well ahead of what community property would have looked like without the preparation. I believe her. The divorce was finalized 18 months after that hotel phone call. Loretta moved to Scottsdale, closer to her sister. I heard she started working again, some kind of office management role. I hope she's okay. I mean that too. Darnell, I found out indirectly through a mutual acquaintance, did not end up with her. He was apparently back with someone else within months. I was not surprised. Men like that rarely surprise you. What surprised me was Simone. I didn't expect at 53 to feel the way I started feeling. I had written off that particular experience, The kind where you catch yourself thinking about a person for no particular reason in the middle of a workday. The kind where a conversation that should take 15 minutes takes 2 hours because neither of you wants to end it. I had filed that under things that belong to young people, and I had accepted that filing without much ceremony. She made me unfile it. We took our time. She was deliberate about it in a way that I understood and respected. She wanted to be certain she was choosing something real and not just choosing against something painful. I felt the same. We waited until the divorce was final. Then we waited a few more months after that. Last spring we got married. Small ceremony, immediate family only. My daughter flew in from Denver and cried, which she would be embarrassed to know I'm mentioning. My son shook Simone's hand and then hugged her, which is more than he does with most people, and which told me everything I needed to know. Loretta never filed anything against me personally. Not a defamation claim, not a harassment complaint, nothing. I think part of her understood, the same part that had known, on some level, that she was spending years taking something for granted that could not be taken for granted indefinitely. I don't think she's a bad person. I think people make choices, and sometimes the choices accumulate into a version of themselves they didn't intend and can't easily walk back from. She wanted everything and planned to take it. What she didn't plan for was someone who had spent 30 years learning to think 3 steps ahead on every project he touched. Someone who, once he understood the situation, was not going to be caught flat-footed. I built something from nothing once. I knew how to protect it. The morning after our small wedding, Simone and I sat in the kitchen of the house I'd bought after the divorce, mine outright, titled to me personally, and drank coffee the same way we had on that hotel balcony. She was reading something on her tablet. I was looking out the window at the yard, thinking about what I wanted to plant in the spring. It was very quiet, the good kind. I thought about the 32 years, all the accumulated weather of them, and I thought about how strange it is that things end, and then other things begin. And sometimes the things that begin are better than anything you thought you still had coming. I'm not a man who uses the word grateful easily. But that morning, in that kitchen, with the light coming in the way it does in Arizona in October, honey-colored, low and long, I felt something close to it. That was enough. There's a particular kind of silence that comes after a big decision lands. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of something finally being level. I felt it on that hotel balcony, coffee in hand, sun just clearing the horizon. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't relief, exactly. It was closer to the feeling you get when you finish a job that took everything you had and you stand back and see it solid. I've thought a lot about what made the difference, not just legally, not just financially, but in terms of who I was through all of it. The easy version of this story is about a man who outmaneuvered his wife. That's not the version I want to tell because that's not what I was trying to do. What I was trying to do was not become someone I couldn't recognize. When Simone walked into my office and told me what she knew, I had a choice about the kind of man I was going to be in the hours and weeks that followed. I could have blown everything up, called Loretta that same night, confronted Darnell, made a scene that would have felt satisfying for about 4 minutes and cost me everything I'd built, legally, financially, emotionally. Anger is expensive. I knew that. So I held it, and I turned it into something colder and more useful. That's not something I learned from a book. That's something you learn from years of running a business where a bad decision made in a bad moment can cost you a contract you spent a decade earning. You learn to sit with discomfort long enough to think clearly. You learn that the person who reacts first rarely wins. That kind of discipline, the kind that holds even when everything in you wants to break, that's not a natural gift. It's built the same way you build anything worth having. Slowly, under pressure, through repetition. Loretta was not unintelligent. She had planned, she had prepared, she had even consulted legal counsel. What she hadn't accounted for was that I had spent 30 years solving problems that didn't come with instruction manuals. She assumed that because I'd never fought her, because I had always shrugged and walked away from arguments, I was passive. What I was selective. There's a difference. I just never bothered to explain it. And here's the part I've had to sit with. The part that doesn't feel clean even now. I don't think she deserves to be poor. I don't wish her a hard life. What she did was a betrayal, yes. But she was also a person who had spent decades feeling like she wanted more than she had, and she handled that feeling badly, and it cost her. That's not karma in any mystical sense. That's just the plain arithmetic of choices and consequences. You make your moves, the board responds. What I know is this. I never stopped doing what was right. I didn't lie to her. I didn't fabricate anything. I used what was legally mine, moved within what the law allowed, and protected what I had built with my own hands. There's a difference between playing dirty and playing smart, and I have to be able to look at what I did and know which one it was. Simone taught me something in those early months, mostly without meaning to. She showed me what it looks like when a person handles pain with their integrity still attached. She didn't become vindictive. She didn't fall apart. She showed up with a legal pad and good questions and kept her feet under her. I recognized that quality because I was trying to practice it myself. The quiet in that kitchen, the October light, her reading her tablet while I thought about what to plant. That wasn't luck. That was what happens when two people choose, over and over, to build something carefully instead of burning something down quickly. I'm 54 years old. I still go to work every morning. The business is in good shape. The yard needs attention, same as always. Some things are worth protecting. The trick is knowing which ones and being willing to do the slow, unglamorous work of actually protecting them before it's too late to do it right.